On Saturday the 16th of August 1980, the town of Whiston, Merseyside, England, was enjoying one of those warm summer evenings that seemed endless. Children played in the streets, neighbours chatted over fences, and the air still carried the heat of the day. For 11-year-old best friends John Greenwood and Gary Miller, it was simply another day of adventure. They had spent much of it together, sharing laughter and games, before sitting down for tea at Gary's house on Raleigh Avenue. It was early evening when they decided to head back out. Their plan was nothing unusual: to walk down to the local tip, a disused colliery off Pottery Lane, in the area now known as Stat Moors Park. The area was known among local children as a place to explore, with grassy tracks and heaps of discarded rubbish. In those days, children roamed freely, and such places held a certain thrill. At around 7 p.m, the boys left Gary's home, making their way along familiar streets towards the colliery. The sun was beginning to dip, but the evening was still bright. They could not have known that they were walking towards an encounter that would end their young lives. At about 7:20 p.m, a local man walking his dog noticed someone crouched down on the colliery grounds, appearing to be, quote, banging something. After the man left the area, the dog walker went to investigate and heard faint moaning beneath a discarded mattress. Lifting it, he discovered both Greenwood and Miller gravely injured. They had been brutally beaten. The man immediately called 999, his voice carrying urgency and disbelief. When police and paramedics arrived, both John and Gary were still alive but gravely injured. They were rushed to Whiston Hospital, where surgeons fought to save them. Both had suffered fractured skulls, and it was believed their attacker had slammed their heads against the ground. Despite intensive surgery, John Greenwood died in the early hours of Sunday morning. Gary Miller survived for several more days, but never regained consciousness and ultimately succumbed to his injuries. A post-mortem later revealed that one of the boys had been strangled with a rope, while both had suffered severe head injuries consistent with having their heads forcefully struck against the ground. Neither of the boys were sexually assaulted, ruling that out as a motive for the crime. The attack was unlike anything the community had seen. Whiston, a place where children roamed freely and neighbours looked out for each other, were left reeling. As investigations began, the dog walker who discovered the boys described seeing a, quote, lone white man near the site, around 35 years old, with dark hair swept back and wearing a brown jacket. This man was never identified. In the weeks that followed, Merseyside police focused their attention on a local man, 20-year-old John Cheeseman from Prescott. In Whiston, he was a familiar figure, often seen wandering the village alone. Locals recalled that he typically wore baggy jeans and an oversized brown jacket, several sizes too large for him. His hair was long and unkempt, his face usually unshaven with a dark moustache, and his overall appearance was scruffy and slightly dirty. This description closely matched that given by the dog walker who witnessed the incident, recalling a, quote, scrappy man in a brown jacket crouched at the scene. Cheeseman was known to spend time playing cards on the streets with local boys and regularly volunteered at the nearby scout hut. The attack on Gary and John took place on his birthday, the 16th of August. While in police custody, Cheeseman confessed to the murders. He signed his statement, which read, quote, "There was only me, John, and his mate there, and they started to call me names. They started swearing at me. I then started to hit them. They carried on calling me the F word and calling me names, so I started to hit them again. Then I thought one of them was dead. He wasn't breathing. Then I listened to his heart. Then I got a piece of rope and put it around his neck. I thought the other one was dead. He wasn't breathing. He was unconscious. The rope I had put around one of the lad's neck I threw away near the railings. John's mate said I was knocking a married woman off. When I hit them, they fell on a mattress. When it was all over, I left the mattress there. It was near them. When I left the boys, I climbed over the railings and went through a tunnel and home. I hope the scoutmaster doesn't find out. The confession was considered especially incriminating because at that point no public mention had been made of a rope being involved. The pathologist had not yet disclosed this detail, indicating that Cheeseman possessed information that only the perpetrator could have known. Following this, however, serious concerns about the legitimacy of this confession quickly surfaced. His defence argued that he was mentally deficient, with a mental age of around 10, and should never have been interviewed without a solicitor or a guardian present. These safeguards were not in place when questioned by police. In May of 1981, Cheeseman stood trial at Liverpool Crown Court. The proceedings attracted significant attention, with the families desperate for justice. But the prosecution's case collapsed. The defence highlighted procedural failings, and the jury acquitted Cheeseman of murder. The acquittal meant, under the double jeopardy laws of the time, Cheeseman could never again be tried for the murders, no matter what new evidence might surface. The rule, intended to protect individuals from repeated prosecution, instead became an impenetrable barrier to justice in the eyes of those left behind. The failure to convict left an open wound and open questions. Over the years, other names surfaced. A Sunday Times investigator later pointed towards Robert Fisher, who died in 1991 at the age of 73. Allegedly, Fisher's wife, Ethel, told friends she knew her husband had killed the boys, and that she could no longer live with the guilt. In 1999, she allegedly died by her own hand. Police at the time of the murders had appealed for information about a man seen with 3 boys aged between 12 and 14 years near the church hall on Dragon Lane between 6:45 p.m. and 7:20 p.m. 2 of these boys were seen standing on the wall outside the church hall, and 1 was within its grounds. Investigators urged these witnesses to come forward, suspecting they could hold vital information. For John's younger sister, Debbie Terrell, later known as Debbie Lewis, the murders were a defining wound. She was just 2 years old at the time. Quote, "I haven't got my own memories of John, so my memories of him are what people tell me," she explained years later. "He used to sing to me and follow me around to make sure I was okay. He'd keep an eye on me if we went on a day out to the beach or somewhere." As she grew up, Debbie carried the absence of her brother alongside a determination to seek justice. Quote, "We lost my mum in 2021 and that was heartbreaking. But another level of heartbreak was added, knowing that she's not seen justice done." She worried not only for herself, but for the others who have suffered the loss. Quote, "Gary's mum is in her 80s, my dad's in his 70s, and it's terrible to think that they might not see justice." Gary's mother, Alma, also spoke publicly, appealing for help and describing her son and his friend as, quote, "just normal 11-year-old children. They did nobody any harm." She was tormented by the thought of what had happened. Quote, "Their killer deliberately left them to die. I can't get that out of my head." John's mother, Barbara, expressed a similar anguish. Quote, "We feel like we've let the boys down as they've never had their justice." The years following the murders were marked by missed opportunities and investigative failings. In 2008, a review found that items of forensic evidence had been lost or destroyed, a revelation that compounded the family's pain. In 2016, the case was reopened after new evidence emerged. A Sunday Times investigation had unearthed potential witnesses and fresh leads. A social media campaign, particularly on Facebook, encouraged people with knowledge of the case to speak out. Some did, providing accounts they had never shared with police before. Merseyside police made specific appeals to trace 2 boys reportedly assaulted by an older man outside Whiston Health Centre in July 1980, only weeks before the murders. They also sought information on a boy known as Duffy or Cuffy, seen with another youth at Whiston Labour Club on the day of the killings. Investigators even reached out to anyone connected to the 28th St Helens Scout Group or Halsney Junior School at that time. Detective Chief Inspector John Williams stressed the importance of coming forward, quote, "Over the years, a number of lines of inquiry have been pursued and a number of people have been spoken to since the new appeal in 2016. However, we are still seeking information." 3 years into the reopened investigation, Merseyside Police faced the families with a sobering update. Then Chief Constable Andy Cook admitted publicly, quote, "Having carried out several cold case reviews and following the re-investigation of the murder, it is fair to say that the investigation was not as thorough as it could have been, or in line with the investigation standards expected of policing today. On behalf of Merseyside Police, I want to offer our sincere apologies to the families of John and Gary, and I would like to reassure them that we remain committed to finding the person responsible." It was an apology the families had long deserved, but it came with bitter news. The Director of Public Prosecutions had reviewed the file of new evidence and decided there was not enough to proceed. The DPP acknowledged the case's tragedy and promised to reconsider if, quote, "sufficient compelling new evidence emerged, but for now the investigation had stalled again." For Debbie, the fight continues. She has pledged to keep going no matter how long it takes. Quote, "We still have hope and will never give up. I want to see the right person found guilty in court, and for everyone to know. What happened doesn't just affect them either. It affects generations that didn't even meet John and people who weren't even alive to meet him. When a child is murdered, you can't imagine the ripple effect that it has in their family." Marking the 40th anniversary of the murders, she made a public plea. Quote, "Our family's hearts were broken 40 years ago when 2 loved and cherished boys were taken. 40 years later, those broken hearts have not healed. I see the pain in my parents' faces. They live with loss and injustice. I appeal to our community today. Please, it's not too late to do the right thing. You could make the difference. You could help to bring some peace to these broken people. And to the person who killed the boys, I say this. Let this 40-year anniversary serve as a promise to you that I will never give up. I will never stop working tirelessly to get justice for my brother and his friend. Tell the truth." More than 4 decades on, the murders of John Greenwood and Gary Miller are still unsolved. Their families have endured a lifetime without answers, their grief compounded by systemic failings and the cruel barrier of double jeopardy laws. For Whiston, the events of that summer evening in 1980 remain a chilling reminder that even in small, close-knit communities, the most unimaginable crimes can happen, and that justice delayed is often justice denied. The case remains open. Police continue to urge anyone with information, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, to come forward. Contact can be made through Merseyside Police on 101, via social media at merpolcc, or anonymously through Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111.